I think what I accidentally did was click start streaming, and because I'm not connected to a server, it got very confused. Anyway, continuing on with like all the insanity. Hey, you're going to be on YouTube, guys. Ooh. Exactly. Fantastic. So yeah, it's currently snowing, and we're just going to wrap up the second part of this stream. So before, where we left off, we weren't getting any of these messages to show up, and this was kind of a dope moment for me because we have a variable called messages. So when we're trying to add something to something called messages, we've encountered an error that we like to call the name collision. So because the messages framework uses the name messages, we really want to leave that alone. So let's just not have our own messages kind of interfering, and let's see what happens when we go back to our page here. So now when I refresh the page, oh, look at all these error messages. They kind of get built up over time until you get to show them off to your user. Yeah. So it's working as intended now. Great. So we're not crazy. It did look right. It was an error related to showing off the other variable named messages. Okay, so we have a working login registration, so we can demonstrate that again real quick. With Ricardo logging in. And currently, this page doesn't have a whole lot going on. So what we're trying to build here is a simple app that just allows users to send messages to other users. So what we want on this page is to know what other users exist that we could potentially send messages to, and also know if we've received any messages from them. So it could be a little bit tricky, but let's first tackle the part where we want to see all of the users who we could send messages to. And currently we only have one user, so we need to make a couple others. So as usual, you guys.
William, yes.
Okay, we can make this William. We can go full on William. And Scribner with email wscribner @.com. So you're becoming an honorary Coding Dojo employee essentially. Scribdiesel. Okay. Looks good to me. Your date of birth will be the same date of birth we've been giving everyone, and your password will be the only password I give to anything because then I remember what it is. So that's William in here. Capulani, definitely. Capulani. Email can just be cap@Coding Dojo. And everybody is getting the same birthday. It's just a huge coincidence that we all showed up here with the same birthday. And because Jeff, even though he's not here, will want to be in here, let's add Jeff. He wanted El Jefe as his username, I think, so El Jefe at codingdojo.com. El Jefe, also conveniently born on the same day here. Alright, let's add one more before we're done here. So who else wants to be in here?
Sam.
Yeah, what happened to Sam? He was here. Well, he's here in our hearts, and he's going to be in our database as well. So that's good enough. Sam. Oh, Desta wants to be in it? Oh, well, Desta's here, so Desta, you get priority. Desta, Yalu. Okay. Desta at codingdojo.com. Desta. No, not Desta. 1990, as everybody else gets the same exact birthday. It's just a galactic level coincidence. Everybody born on the same day. Alright, so now we have 5 users. I should have stayed logged in as one of them. Let's continue on with Desta. Okay, so Desta's still logged in now. So we want to see all the users we could potentially send messages to. So we need to fetch all of those users. So we're currently on this home page, so we want to know all of our users. So we can instead of just having this user, we can also get users. This can be user.objects.all. So instead of just having user, we can also have users, the plural of it, and we can see all of our users. So let's go to our home.html, and we're also going to include users plural. And let's just have an HR here to break these two up. So this is all of our users currently. We have 5 of them. So if we want to show off our users in any way that makes sense, let's just go with a table for now, just to make it easy enough to see what's in here. So let's do that. So we can have a table, border equals 1, and we can have a table row at the top, and inside of this we'll have table headers, and it's just going to say the name of the person who you could send a message to. So name, and I think it'll also have a button that you can click on to go to a form that allows you to send a message to them. So we'll also have that. So we'll say send message. So this is a question, send message. And we want to go through each one of our users and have a column or a row for them. So we'll have new rows that get generated. So for user and users, with an N4 here, and we're going to create table rows inside of this. So 1 row for each one of these users, and the name is going to have user.first_name, and let's also have their last name. So user.last_name. And I'm just going to put an extra space in here just to make it look nice. And for now, this should be good enough until we figure out how we want to get to these other pages. So now we have the names of all our users and another column that says send message. Alright. I think I misspelled border. That's causing it to not... There we go, now we have a border. So we're going to have a button here that will take us to another page where we can send a message to these users. So what we'll do is we probably want to have an anchor tag, href. We'll figure out what we want to have in this link in a moment, but we also want it to be a button that says send, just say send message. I was going to put the person's name in there, so it'd be like send this person a message, send that person a message. And in fact, I might change it to be like that instead of having these 2 columns, but just instead have all the buttons. But we can plan how we want it to look later. Right now, we just want to make it work. Then we can work on making it look good. So we'll have the send message button. Perfect. And we need to close out our anchor tag as well. So when I come back, we have all these send message buttons. They don't go anywhere, so we need to create routes for them. So what piece of information about these users is unique about them? So their ID, that's right. So username, we didn't require that to be unique. So we'll go with their IDs. So we'll say we'll have a route that says message / user.id. So I'm going to save that, and then when I refresh the page, it doesn't look any different. But if, for instance, I were to hover over one of these buttons, it'll say in the bottom left of the page, localhost 8000 /message /1. So this means go to this page, and it has 1 for Ricardo, 2 for Will, 3 for Capulani, 4 for Jeff, 5 for Desta. And those are all our users currently. But we can clean this up a little bit more. So currently the logged in user is Desta. Desta, do you want to send messages to yourself? Probably not. You probably want to send a message to Jeff instead. And say, hey Jeff, we're missing you today. So we don't really want to include Desta in this list because it doesn't really make sense for him to send messages to himself. So we want to remove him from this list somehow. So how could we do that? So there's a couple ways. So we could change it so that this list of users doesn't include Desta, or we could also come back to our home.html and just make sure that Desta doesn't see himself in this list. So because we have access to a single user, we could look for the ID of that user in here. I'll make a judgment call that because we're using the variable name user in here as well, it'll be kind of tricky to know that user versus the outer user. So maybe we should just remove him from the list altogether. So, and there's a fairly easy way to do that, and that's called exclude. .exclude allows you to remove anything, basically, if you match it based on what you're trying to remove. So it's like the opposite of filter. So .exclude says you have these results, exclude these things. And we're going to exclude based on ID equal to this ID. So we can just paste that in. So this one change, and now Desta can no longer send a message to himself. Well, he could if he hacks the site, but hopefully he won't do that. So we can remove. We don't need to be printing this anymore, so we can get rid of this. We have this table. So let's go back to our home.html. So we have this table. Looks good. Now when we click on, so we want us to send Jeff a message. So we don't have this route, this message /4. So we need to go ahead and create that route. So we're going to go to our urls.py, and we're going to create a new URL. This is going to say message / and this is the tricky part. We need parentheses $P, and we're going to call this ID inside of it. And I believe we need a /D because it's a digit, and a plus because there can be many of them. And then we need our $, end quote. So I think this is the right syntax. We can figure it out pretty quickly if it's not. And we want this to go to a method or a function called views.message. Maybe message is a bad thing to call it because we have so many different messages going on. Let's maybe call it something like views.newMessage. There we go. That's gonna probably work for us. So we're gonna make a new message function inside our views. Stay up there. So we'll have a function new message, which takes in request, and it also receives ID from the urls.py. So it's getting ID from here. And for now, we're just going to make sure we're getting that ID. So we'll just print ID, and we will return redirect back to /home. So this should allow us to at least see that we're getting this ID 4. So now I can come back. I'm getting 4 being printed, so that means I am getting the ID. So now I can start thinking about, well, what do I want to show off if I'm going to be creating the message for these users. So from here, I think I want to make a form that just lets you type in a message, click send, basically. So let's make that form real quick. So we're just going to have a new message.html. So we're going to continue calling this signal app, or dojo signal, I think. And from here, we need a form, and it only really needs to have one piece of information from this person, and that's going to be just the content of the message that we want to send. So if we go back to our models, that's really our message doesn't really have a whole lot going on, just content and who's sending it and who's receiving it. That's all we really need the information for. So for our HTML, we just need that content. So we're gonna use a text area just to make it a little bit easier to write a longer message if you want to. And this will have a name of content. And maybe I'll put a placeholder in here that says your message. ... And we'll have a input type submit, which will say send message. Okay. So we need to have a well, let's first make sure we're getting this form. So when we click on sending a message to Jeff, it's currently redirecting instead of showing us this form. So let's change what we're doing in our views. So we don't want to redirect anymore, we want to render request, and we want to show off signal app / new message.html. And we don't need a print ID anymore either, so we can get rid of that. Okay, so with that change, now when we click on send message, we get this page. Not a lot going on, but we can add stuff to it. So you can leave your message and then click send message. Currently, it doesn't know what to do with it, so we will have to add stuff in. So in this new message.html, we probably we need to set an action, and this action can be so we want to say something like add message, and we also need to know who we're sending the message to. So we need to send the ID of the person we're sending the message to along with this. So that means we need to use this ID, and we need to get this ID from here into the form here. So the easiest way to do that is just to create a dictionary. I'm just going to have a ID that refers to this ID. I don't actually need two brackets. I don't know why I put two. So I just need one set of brackets around this, and we're sending a dictionary that includes this ID. So now we can put ID in here, and we'll be sending a message to the right person. And we want to use this as a method post, because we don't want everybody to see these messages up in the URL. So if we're using post for once, because we're kind of pressed on time, we want to finish before the snow gets particularly bad. It looks like it may have stopped, which would be great, but I'm just going to remind myself, hey, I do need my CSRF tokens. Let's do that right now. And this pretty much looks good to go. So from here, I can refresh the page. Now, what sort of message would you want to send, Desta? Where are you? Yeah, where are you, Jeff? So let's send this message. Page not found. Okay, so we don't have an add message /4. So let's create that route. So we're just going to copy this one because it's pretty similar. And instead of saying new message, this one's going to say add message. Instead of saying message, this one's going to say add message. So we need to now make an add message function. So let's do that. Add message request, and once again we're getting the ID from the route. And when we're adding this message, we have a method to do this already. We made this yesterday, so we have this message class, and we created for it this. It's right here, isn't it? This send message method, and it can respond with message cannot be blank, or it can respond with a message object. So once again, we probably want to do a little bit of validation on this form, and we're going to use the send message to do it. But that also means we probably want to display errors to the user. Well, there's only one type of error that can be displayed, telling them, hey, the message can't be blank. So we will do that. We're not going to use like a whole response dictionary for this form because it just has one thing being saved. That's kind of excessive just for just one piece of content. So we'll do it this way. So in reviews.by, when we want to add message, we will then need to use the message class that we got from up here, this message class. So we can say new message equals message dot objects dot send message. That's the method we created. That's this send message here. So this one. And what do we need to send along? Content sent by and received by. Alright. So content is going to be from request.post. And let's just make sure I have that as the key in here. I did call it content. Perfect. And I'm gonna break this out so it's a little bit easier to read. So that's our content is being sent. We also need the sent by. That's the person who's sending it. We can get that from session because they are still logged in, hopefully. So we can copy request.session user ID. That's the person who's sending it. And the person it's being sent to is coming back as this ID. So this is all we really need to do to send a new message. And then we can print new message if we want to see what that is. And then let's return redirect to /home, either way. And we can handle displaying error messages if we need to. So we may end up doing that. But for now, this is all we really need. So let's see what happens when we try to add this message now. Okay, so it's sent. Did it save anything? Okay, it gave us back a message object. So let's try sending another message to Jeff without putting anything in here. And it's going to tell us message cannot be blank. So right away we could check to see if what we're getting back is a type string or if it's a type message object. So we can do that to handle whether we should display errors or not. So let's give that a try. So if new message, if the type of new message is string, if type of new message is string, then we want to create an error message. So let's copy this part here. Messages, add message. Instead of error message, it's going to be new message because new message is going to return back to us this message cannot be blank string. So that'll work. So this will be new message. So if it's type string, we get that. And we're going to return redirect back to the form so the user can see, hey, this message didn't get saved, and they'll get to see that error. So in order to go back to that form, we need to go back to the new message route, which I believe we have under just message. Okay, so that's message in here slash, and it needs to match the ID of the user. So how can we put the ID of the user in here? So we could just do plus ID if we want to, right? But this is probably, it might not be coming back to us as a string, so just to be careful, we're going to wrap it in string. And because I'm forgetful, I also need request here. So don't forget the request part up here. Actually, I don't, because this is redirect. What am I thinking? So this is going to basically add the ID on the end of message. So we can do it this way. We could also do .format with curly brackets, that's also equivalent, but just do whatever way makes the most sense to you. Plus is pretty easy to use as well. So we'll go with this one for now. So if in order to see these messages, we're going to need to copy this part so we can display the messages if there are any error messages. So we're going to copy that in here. And now when we go back and we try to send a message without anything in there, it sent us back here. Great. Did I forget to do something? Send message. So we're going to message 4. So let's clear our views again real quick. If type new message is string, print it is a string. Then we're going to redirect to there. Let's have an else. I did not mean to do that. I keep doing it. So let's see why that was acting up there. So if type new message is string, we're doing this. Otherwise, we're doing that. So let's attempt to send a message without anything in there. And it's not changing. Are we getting anything from in here? So maybe there's an error in our models.py. So let's take a quick look. Let's print content and see if maybe we're getting something when we're not really expecting anything. So I'm not sure what's causing this. So let's go back to our send message. We're going to put nothing in there. Send message. And it's printing nothing. And it says go back to home. So did I forget to save? What's going on here?
Well, isn't your message in the message manager class called message, but on the views in the index, didn't we have to change it to messages 1 so it doesn't conflict with the errors?
That could be it, but that's why I called this new message, so I'd avoid conflicting with it. And this message class is capital, so it should be also avoiding conflicting with it. But it might be related to another name collision, you're right. So let's print our new message. Type new message is string. So it maybe is not coming back to us as a string. It might be coming back to us as something else. So let's attempt this, and let's look and see what we're getting. Message cannot be blank. Okay, so it is telling us that, but is it for some reason not a string? So let's also print type of new message. So this is where we're debugging just by printing and seeing, well, what are we getting back? Because I think this if statement is just not being entered. So we're not seeing that it is a string. So let's figure out what's going on there. So once again, we're going to try to send this message without putting anything in there. We're getting a type Unicode. Unicode isn't a string, right? So I need to check to see if it's type Unicode. So what happened is I made an assumption that what I'm getting back from my models.py is in fact a string, but in reality it's a Unicode. That's why relying on it being a string is maybe a little bit harder than just having an entire response object where I can check if it's valid or not. But there's all sorts of ways you can do this to check. So let's go back here, now attempt to send a message with nothing in it. Message cannot be blank. Perfect. That's all we expected to see, that's all we wanted to see. That works as expected. So it wasn't making these messages anyway, it just wasn't displaying this error to us. So we can also send another message, everybody misses you. You have to imagine Jeff's going to watch this and he's just going to tear up. He'll be like, oh, I can't believe everyone was missing me. Alright, so we're able to send these messages. And now we need to be able to view these messages somehow. So let's see. Let's have a second part of this screen that's going to be dedicated to being a display indicating whether or not you have messages. So let's do that. So let's go back to our home.html, and we'll have this HR here, and we're going to need to be able to check to see if the logged in user has any messages sent to them. So we can check to see if we look in if we look in the messages, if there are any messages that have a received by ID equal to you. That means you have messages. Did people have a question? Oh, okay. All right. So we're going to use this message, and we're going to look to see if we have any messages with a received by for us. So we're going to call this. We're going to go back to home, and we're going to call this your messages. This is going to be message.objects.filter. We're using filter to get all of the ones that match for you. So that's received by is equal to, once again, request.session user ID. So that's the person who's receiving these. And now this dictionary is starting to get a little bit big now that we're going to be putting a third thing in there. So let's just go ahead and make our context dictionary. So once it starts getting long enough, I don't like doing it this way anymore. So I'm going to have a user, comma, I'm going to have a users, comma, and I'm going to have a your messages, comma. We don't need that comma, actually. And this is going to be paired up with each one of these things. So we're just going to be rewriting this to make it a little bit easier to read. So we're pairing that up with this one, pairing this one up with this one, and this one up with this one. And we can get rid of you guys, and then instead of having this, we can just say context. So this is effectively the same thing. We're just spreading it out so it's a little bit easier for us to read and understand what's going on. So we're passing along all three of these lists of users or messages. They're all being passed into this context. Okay, so now we can go back to the views.py, or not the views.py, the home.html, and we can check. We can check to see if you have any messages. So we can check, and this is the tricky part. We'll do an if check if your messages with a pipe length equals 0. We'll have an and if. So if the your message's length equals 0, you're going to get a message that says you have no new messages.
What does the pipe do again?
So the pipe, we can't use len, the function len, inside of the templating. This will return the length of what's in here. You have no new messages. So let's see if this works. It should say you have no new messages for Desta, because he hasn't received any messages yet. So it says you have no new messages. But if we log out, and we log in as Jeff, it doesn't say you have no new messages, because Jeff has messages. So for Jeff, we want to display how many messages he has, and have like a button where he can go and click on it to view all of his new messages. So instead of an end if, let's use an else.
What's going on? I don't know, but it should be working.
And this is going to say you have your message length new messages. And let's put that in a parenthesis because it could be just one. So for Jeff, he's going to see you have 2 new messages. And then we can also have a button for him to go see what those messages are. So let's add that feature. So let's think about this. So we're going to need a new route for this as well. Let's do an anchor tag. We'll figure out what we want in here. We'll have a button. Yeah, it's always really cool when it starts to come together like that. You're like, we spent so much time on this database and just like this stupid login register method, and now you actually start building something. It gets way more fun at this point. So let's go for view messages. So maybe that's what we should call our route as well. Let's call it the view messages route. And it also, no, these messages are specific to the person who's getting them, so we don't need to pass it anything else. Perfect. So now we can come back here, and we have a button to view our messages. So when we click on this button, well, we don't have a route for view messages yet, so we have to go make that. So let's go to our URLs, and this will be URL, and this is, we don't need the slash. We have view messages. Views.view messages. Alright, and now we're going to need to make a route for this. So all the way at the bottom here. Def view messages takes in request. And once again, we can get our messages from this thing, that horrific looking thing. So let's just make this a variable instead. And then we can return, we're going to want to render a new page so the user can see their messages. Return render request, comma, we need a new HTML, so let's make that. This can be the messages.html, because we're going to show the user all of their messages at once, and they have to read them really quickly before they all disappear. We're going to add in that feature too. So at first, maybe they'll just disappear in 15 seconds. Later on, we could maybe figure out how long these messages are to figure out how much time they should be allowed to look at them. Just for like an average reading person base, we can come up with something like that. It wouldn't be too hard. So I think we might do that. So this is our messages.html. This is signal app. This is going to say your new messages. For now, it's going to have your underscore messages. Oops. And in our views.py, that's our your messages, and we're going to pass along a we're going to say where to find these messages first. So signal underscore app slash messages.html, and inside of this dictionary we're going to have the key your messages along with the your messages variable that we created. So that's all we need to pass in there. And now in the messages.html, this is where we need to start displaying the messages to the user. So let's do that real quick. For message in your messages. Oops. Let's have our end for before I forget it. And for each one of these messages, how are we going to display them? We could make fancy divs and have it look all nice. I think we'll show who's saying what time they sent it on, and then the message. So we're going to have a p tag, and I'm going to use strong tags. Does anyone know what strong tags do? It makes it nice and bold, that's right. So we're going to have strong tags, and inside here it's going to say message dot sent by, this is the person who sent it, dot, let's just go by their username. We have a username, let's use it for once. So that's the person who sent it. This can be, we can also say says, colon, and then because we also want to know when it happened, we're going to have parentheses, and inside of these parentheses we can have message dot, is it sent on? I think I said, oh, created at, okay. Message dot created at. So this is just going to put the date inside of parentheses, so it's just out of the way, and it's going to look a little bit more natural, I think, if we do it that way. So we'll have that p tag for just the top part, and in the bottom part it's just going to be, in fact, do I want to show this off? I do. We're going to use pre-tags. The pre-tag. Does anybody happen to know what pre-tag does? Yeah, it shows you exactly what the person put in there. All the spaces and everything. So we're going to, inside of these pre-tags, have the message.content. Perfect. And then after each one of these messages, we'll just have an HR, I guess. Yeah, an HR. And maybe an HR before it as well. Well, that's just doubling up on your HRs. You don't need that many. So we'll have a HR at the beginning, and that'll be the one for the top. There we go. So we don't need your messages anymore. We know we're getting them. And this should show you all of your messages. So when we save this, or when we run this now, we have Desta says this. Where are you? Everyone misses you. That's very sweet. And we're not going. Ordinarily we would have a link to go back, but we're going to have it so that when we display these messages to the person, they see it, and then it's gone. So let's change it so it does that. How do I want to do this? So we're going to need a little bit of JavaScript for this. So this is not something you're going to have to do during the belt exam. JavaScript is not something that is required. If you really want to use JavaScript on it, go for it. But this is just giving us that extra little bit of interactivity that's kind of fun to use. So, have any of you guys ever used the set interval?
Set what?
Set interval.
Yes.
So set interval, what does it do?
It runs a function after a certain interval.
Yeah, so it continues running a function pretty much forever, once every interval of what you're doing. So I can do something like set interval, and I need to name a function I want to call up, and this can be the countdown function, and I can tell it what that interval is going to be. I'm going to go with 1000. 1000 means 1000 milliseconds. So this is going to run once every second, essentially. And this is going to run whatever countdown is that frequently. So we need to make a function called countdown. Function countdown. And all function countdown is going to do, for now, is just going to say alert. I am in a set interval, just to make sure that our set interval is working. This is going to be extremely annoying for us because it's just going to pop up windows once every second. Yeah, this is really awful. So let's see if this works. So I'm refreshing the page. I'm in a set interval. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's stop that. So that's super annoying. But we're going to use this for a countdown timer that is going to show the user how much time they have left to, I don't know, finish reading whatever messages are there. So let's set a variable that's going to be how many seconds they have. And we can figure out how to change this based on how long the messages they have to read are going to be. But for now, we're just going to call this time. And we can give it 15 seconds, let's say. And then on our function countdown, we are going to do what exactly? I think we're going to say time minus minus. That's going to make the time count down as we go. And we're going to instead of alerting, because that's really freaking annoying, we're just going to check if time equals 0. So if time equals 0, we're going to do something. We're going to, for now, let's just make it take us back to the page we were on. Yeah, we'll figure out how to get the time to show up later. Might require a little bit of jQuery. Maybe we can avoid using jQuery. I'd rather not have to bust out jQuery just for this. So in order to go back to the home page, there is a convenient thing we can do in JavaScript called window.location. And we can just say this equals /home. So now, after 15 seconds, 15 seconds is a pretty long time to wait for this. Let's change it to 5 for now. It will take us back to home instantly after 5 seconds. So let's see if we refresh the page. Okay, I have to click OK first. And then I can refresh the page. Come on. There we go. We're no longer there. I didn't click anything. My hands were up here. So using some combination of these two things, let's see. We can count down, and we can have like a timer that shows you how much time you have left to read these things, and you can get sent back at the same time. So
possible to do that on views, like on session.
Instead
of doing here, we can just go to inspector, change the time.
Yeah, I don't think the server can cause you to be sent to a different page. It's not really capable of doing that, but JavaScript is. JavaScript is how we do a lot of interactive things. So, right now, this is completely outside of the scope of what you'd have to do on a belt exam, but it's cool, so that's why we're doing it. So, the other part of this app, we wanted these messages to disappear when you go to this page. So let's do that. So this fetches the your messages. What happens if we want to delete the your messages as well? Well, we can just run delete as well. .delete. So this is going to save all of your messages to a variable. Then it's going to delete all of your messages, and it's just going to show them to you for that brief period of time, and then they're gone from the database. So let's see if this works as expected. So we'll click on View Messages. Oh, they're already gone. Well, that wasn't good. So they were already gone.
Don't you want to delete it when you redirect to home? Like when it goes to home?
Use a separate route to handle delete.
I could, but then you could cause the JavaScript to break, and that would prevent. Well, there's all sorts of holes in this. Most people aren't going to be doing that. So, I thought for sure we would have access to this for a little bit longer, but it looks like your messages gets just trashed instantly, which is kind of funny. What to do? Yeah, that is tricky. And they're gone before you can see them too. All right, we're going to do something a little bit unorthodox. We're going to create another variable for this, and we're going to call this. We're going to do it at the same time. So this is tricky. You don't necessarily have to know how to do this, but we can do this. We're just going to call this store. We're going to store variables in this. This is going to say for message. It's going to say message for message in your messages. Yeah, I know, it's weird, isn't it? So we have a for loop inside of a list. So it's going to go through these messages, and it's going to put each message inside this list. So now your messages is equal to store. So let's see if that survives this being deleted. I sure hope it does. So if it doesn't, then we'll have to really rethink how we're doing this app. So Jeff doesn't have any messages right now. Let's send a message to Desta saying, I don't know, what would Jeff say? Hi. That sounds good. So now Desta has a message, and we can log in as Desta. So now you have a message to view. So if we click on View Messages, hopefully we get to see this message this time. Yeah. Oh yeah. Perfect. And then after 5 seconds, it's gone. And now if we try to go back, oh, we can go back. All right. Well, it's going to go away again, and we don't have any new messages. So I don't know how to clear your ability to go back. That's the tricky one. Yeah, we would have to be using a lot more JavaScript, I think. That's maybe beyond the what we want to do here today, but we kind of get the idea. So yeah, let's just add in one more feature real quick, so you get to see the countdown as you're waiting for the messages to be removed from your site. So let's do that. So var time equals 5. All right. So we need to have a way to show how much longer you can see the messages. So we'll have a h3 tag, let's say, and it's going to say it's going to have an ID equals to time, and this says has nothing inside of it. And here in our countdown function, we will say document dot get element by ID. This is the method to retrieve an element based on its ID. So document dot get element by ID time. All right. Do I remember what to do with this? So I have document get element by ID.
I think you can use that inner HTML to change the HTML inside of it.
Yeah, I can't remember if that's just in jQuery or if that's in raw JavaScript as well.
I think it's JavaScript.
Okay. Get element by ID. So this gets the element by ID. So do I have inner HTML in JavaScript? Inner HTML. Yep, I do have inner HTML. Perfect. So that's exactly what I want here. So inner HTML is going to be equal to these crazy backticks. You guys remember this, right? $, oops, this needs to be inside the backticks. $, time, seconds remaining. Perfect. So now it should show us our countdown. Currently we're just giving people 5 seconds, which is not super generous, but we can figure out how to set that to an appropriate amount later on. And yeah, thank you for that. That was clutch. So now Desta can respond with hello, send a message. We can log back in as Jeff. He has one message to view, and we should see 5 seconds, 4 seconds. Oh yeah. Except it said 1 second remaining when it got rid of you. So yeah, that's so we can have it set countdown to, so we can move the time above, and we can run this once. We can run this once up here as well. So as soon as you land on the page, it says you have that many seconds remaining, and it's going to decrease the time and show you how much time you have remaining. So you will get to see 0 very briefly before it moves you from the page. And this is all else I'm going to be doing here. So who wants to send the final message? Ricardo. So Art Torres. Who are you sending a message to, Ricardo?
William.
All right.
Adios.
Adios. I don't have the. I wish I had the upside down exclamation point too. We'll just make do. So we're sending this message. We're logging out, and we're going to log in as Will. Did you have a weird username that you went with? Was this? No, that was Scrub Diesel. That's right. But your username was fine, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. So we can view your message. All right. So just a little bit of JavaScript thrown on top, and it's a little bit more interactive, and your messages are gone. Who cares that we can go back and view it again? Just pretend that doesn't happen. We would have to spend a bit more time figuring out how to prevent that. Definitely there is a way, I'm sure of it. But yeah, that's pretty much all we're really going to need. So we've handled a self join. We've handled validating that what we're creating has something in it. Message cannot be blank. And we've also handled the delete as well. Delete seems to be happening automatically, but if we had a button that you'd have to click to delete, you're just going to have to run something very similar to what we did here in our views, just a .delete on whatever it is you want to get rid of. So yeah, not too much other craziness to really show off.
Can you talk about deployment a little bit?
Oh yeah, deployment.
24 hours.
Yeah.
So let's just see how much time this has taken so far. We could give deploying a try. If everything goes according to plan, deploying only takes about 30 minutes or so. I know, it can be that fast if everything works according to plan. But how often do things go completely according to plan? Who knows?
We're doing 30 more minutes.
So we could try to deploy this right now if you guys want to.
Yeah. I mean, we have to do it for the exam.
I honestly, like, whenever I've done like live deployment in front of people, it's never really worked out, but we'll give it a try. So let's give it a try.
24 hours and questions.
You have 24 hours, and we'll work with you guys. So the deployment part should not be something you worry about. Worry about passing the test first. We will get you deployed. So yeah, deployment not too bad. It's not the easiest thing in the world either, but you can manage it. If you get a belt, you're more than good enough to deploy. Trust me. You're going to be able to follow along with the deployment. So this is where we have information about deploying. A lot of the information here you can read about. It's not like hugely important that you know the ins and outs. But we're gonna start by going to EC2 intro. Yeah, they're going to be telling you about Amazon AWS. Does anyone know what AWS stands for? Exactly. So Amazon has tons of servers out there, and we're going to be deploying on one of their servers. So we're going to go to creating a new server instance. So I need to log into my AWS account, so let's do that real quick. Let's Google AWS, and it'll probably bring it up. Sign into console. So the first time you do this, just be aware that you will need a credit card. You will need to have your phone with you, and it will give you a weird robocall, and you're just going to set it up. It's really not too bad. So we're going to go into EC2, and we're going to create a new instance. I currently have one running instance. So if everything goes completely not according to plan, I can show you what it looks like when you have something deployed. So we have one that does work. But let's give launching a new instance a try. So we're going to choose Ubuntu Server 1604. So this is a Linux server. It's pretty standard. There's really nothing that thrilling about it. We're going to choose the free tier because why pay money? We just want this to work. So next, configure instance details. Yeah, I don't really want to change any of that. I don't really want to change any of this or that. Security group. Yes, I do need to change this. So SSH. Does anyone happen to know what that stands for? Secure shell. Yes. This is how we're going to communicate with our server. We'll be able to essentially go into our terminal window and connect to another computer somewhere else and basically control it. That's all it is. So we'll just be able to control the computer from our command line, like from here. So we're going to leave this as default. I could set instead of anywhere, I could set it to my IP, that's the IP here. So in order to connect to the server, you have to physically be on the Coding Dojo Wi-Fi. Let's see. But we're going to add a couple rules. One for HTTP traffic, and this one can be accessed from anywhere. So this says people who are trying to reach the server on port 80 are going to be able to access our site and view our site. Port 80 is the one for default HTTP traffic. And that's probably the only one we're going to have set up. But just as a good practice, we're also going to set up the one for HTTPS. So that's somewhere in here. Here it is. So we're probably not going to go through the effort of setting up HTTPS. It's not particularly easy, but it's something that you'll be capable of doing later on. So let's review. I don't need to add any more rules, so let's review and launch. This all looks good to me. So let's launch. Okay, now I have to choose a key that I'm going to use to pair up with this device. I already have one that exists, but I could also create a new one. I'm going to use one that I know I have. I just used like my username here. I acknowledge I have access to this key. So I have to go to the folder that this key exists in order to go into this server. So this is just like an extra layer of security to prevent like ne'er-do-wells from hijacking my server, basically. So click on Launch Instance. Setting up all this stuff, I can go to View Instances, and it's now yellow. It's pending. It'll let me get to it in a moment. So for now, I need to turn my attention to how am I going to get my code from this computer here onto a server somewhere out there. Actually in Northern Virginia, but it's probably just down the road, to be honest. I'm not going to drive myself over there with a thumb drive. I'm going to send it some other way. So how have we been able to store our code online? Like, what have we been using?
GitHub?
GitHub, yeah. So all I have to do is deploy this thing to if I put this thing on GitHub, then I'll be able to get on the server and clone it from GitHub onto the server. So that's what we're going to be doing first. So let's go ahead and make this something we can put on GitHub. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I will need some requirements when I get to that server. I have a virtual environment that I'm using with all this random junk in it. I don't know how many of this stuff I really need. A lot of this is coming from installing IPython, which I'm really not going to be using too much there. So I could probably get rid of a bit of it, but it's not really harming anything either. But I want to create a file that's going to keep track of all of these. So when I get to that other server, I'll be able to grab them all at once. And I can do that with pip freeze, this greater than sign, and I'm going to call it requirements.txt. So this is going to run something called pip freeze, and it's going to save whatever it gives it to a file called requirements.txt. So now I have a requirements.txt, and I can read what's in it with cat. And it's just all the information that was in there. And I can use that to basically launch a virtual environment and just grab everything from there. So I don't have to set it up manually. If I have a bunch of random things I'm using, I can just get them all from this requirements.txt. Okay, so that's pretty good. I also kind of want to make something called a getignore. So let's make that real quick. nano.getignore. And what getignore is it allows me to specify what files I don't want to push up to GitHub. So for me, anything that ends in .pyc, you remember those random compiled Python files? I really don't want to push them up to GitHub. So that's all we're going to put in there for now. If you're on Mac and you don't want to push up .dsstore or whatever random files Mac has, you can also include those in here. I don't have to really worry about that because I'm on Linux, so just .pyc is what I want to get rid of. And .getignore is a hidden file. I can't really see it directly unless I use the ALRT flag, and you can see, hey, it's there. So next I want to make a Git repository. So git init. So we now have a Git repository, and I can run the previous command to see it. .git. So I want to add everything to this repository. Git add space dot. I want to commit can say initial. And I want to, and now I need to push it up to my GitHub. So I need to open GitHub. So let's create a new repository real quick. Repositories, new, I'm going to call this Dojo. Oops, my internet seems to be going slow. Signal. So create this repository. We're going to add this get remote add origin in here. Oops, I have an extra git. Let's get rid of it. There we go. So it added that origin. And now I want to push it up there. So let's push this code. I can tell it what my username is and my password. Oops, I did it wrong. Let's do that correctly. There we go. So now we're pushing everything to GitHub. And now we have everything on GitHub. So now that it's here, I'm just going to go ahead and click on this button and copy this link to my clipboard so that I'll be able to paste it in a moment. Actually, that's a bit premature. I do want to copy something else first. So I'll be coming back to that. In order to push something from GitHub, I have to go to the folder that I have my key in, and that is, I think, in a folder that I called /keys. Where are my keys? Did I put them in documents? Sounds like something I would do. Yep, they're in documents. So I have my PIM keys in here. In order to SSH into the server, let's click on this, and we're going to say actions connect. I need to run this command in the right folder. So let's copy this command from here, and we're going to paste it in. This is an SSH command. I'm going to tell it to use the PEM key, the one that's right here, and to connect to this server. So now it's saying, okay, I'm connected. Am I sure I want to keep connecting? So I'll say yes, because I wouldn't have done that if I didn't want to. And now I'm inside of another. I'm inside of another computer now. I can do uname -a, and it'll tell me that it's some generic Linuxy thing. Perfect. Where this computer physically is, probably down the street in Loudoun County somewhere. Because we probably got a local one. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is update this server. Sudo apt get update. This just looks for any new files to download, basically. And I can run upgrade as well. I don't know if I have to, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's a lot of stuff to get. Okay. So you want to do this because there may be security updates. So that's something you might want to have set up later on to do every so often. We'll go with this option. Interesting. Yeah, that was... normally you don't see a message like that. So that looks good. So we're connected to this thing. Let's actually start referring back to what they're telling us to do again. Server access, server configuration. So they wanted us to do that, update, then they wanted us to install these things. Python pip, Python dev, nginx, and get. So we're installing 4 packages. So Python pip, you guys probably understand what that is. That's the Python's package manager. Python dev, that's just a dev version of Python. Nginx, has anyone ever heard of Nginx? That's our web server. So we're going to be using that. And Git, hopefully you guys know what Git is useful there for. That's how we're going to be getting our code off of GitHub onto this. So we need Git in order to get it. So we're just going to run all these. It's installing all that really fast. And it'll finish installing soon enough. There it goes. So now that it's finished installing, I can... they want me to update again and run that. Okay. So we're gonna run update because maybe one of these packages has newer software available for it. So let's do that. Nope, no new software. And they also want us to install virtual env. So we need our virtual environment. Okay, that's done. And now they want us to git clone our server down. So we're gonna git clone our code from here. I'm just gonna copy this again, and I'm gonna type in git clone paste. So it's gonna get everything I have. So now if I ls, I see I have my project here now, which is great because otherwise it's kind of hard to reproduce all your code there. You could type it up manually, but that'd be a pain, a huge pain. So from here, they want us to do what? They want us to make our virtual environment, so let's do that. So we're going to go into Dojo Signal, and we're going to create a new virtual environment. We're going to call it VEMV. And then we are going to run a command to install everything at once. Oh, yeah, we first want to source this. Source VEMV bin activate. And now that we've activated it, we're going to pip install our requirements.txt. So you remember when we created this requirements.txt, this is going to just install everything that was in it. So that looks good. And we're also going to pip install something called, we're going to pip install Django, bcrypt, and Django extensions. Okay. These should probably mostly already be here. And we're going to pip install gunicorn. So gunicorn stands for green unicorn. This is basically the thing that's going to take over from wsgi.py, and it's going to communicate with Nginx for us. So it's a weird name. I think it stands for green unicorn, something weird like that. So now they're going to give us a refresher on how to use Vim. My advice: don't use Vim, use Nano instead. So Vim is fine though. It's just tricky to see what mode you're in currently. Editing settings. Okay, so now we need to be very careful about what our repo name is, our project name, and our public IP. So I'm going to open I'm going to make a set of notes for myself so I can keep track of these. So whenever it says my repo name or project name or EC2 public IP, so IP, I'm just going to want to know what they're referring to. So for the IP, that is this number here, or this set of 4 numbers. So I'm going to keep track of that. For my project name, that is whatever is inside of here. So dojo underscore signal lowercase. Bless you. So dojo underscore signal. And my repo name is this thing, dojo dash signal. So that's going to be confusing a little bit. Dojo dash signal. I recommend writing these down so you don't confuse them, because we're going to need to edit commands that were given based on what we named these things. So from here, oops, let's not save this. We don't really need to save it. Let's go back to the install instructions. Alright, so it's going to tell us what they want us to start doing. We're going to do cd into project name, sudo vim settings.py, so they want us to edit our settings.py. So we're going to go back into Dojo Signal, and instead of running sudo vim, we're going to run sudo nano settings.py. Huh. I don't see why there is nothing in here. That is strange. Oh, we need to go inside a dojo signal, right? Dojo signal. Now we're going to sudo nano settings.py. There we are. So this is our settings.py file, and we've just loaded it up here, and we need to make a couple changes. So here, debug equals true. Does anyone know what this means? Yeah, it shows all of our errors, but when we go to deploy it, do we want to have our errors still pop up when people go and try to break things? No. If you're showing your errors, it makes it easier for people to try to hack you. So we don't want to show our errors. So we change that to false. And now for allowed hosts, I believe they want me to put the IP address in there as a string. So let's do that. So I'm going to copy this from here into my terminal. So this is a string, so in between here we have quotes on either side of it. And then they want me to go all the way to the bottom. So I'm just going all the way to the bottom. And they want me to set another variable called static root, which equals this. So what are static files, guys? Pretty much, yeah. So we're just going to say we're going to collect all of these static files in this one folder. So things like your CSS, your JavaScript files, your images, they're all going to get collected into this folder. So, and we're just setting a default place to put them. So that's what static root is doing. So I'm gonna save this, say yes to change the settings, and then click and press enter to make those changes. So now they want me to type in python manage.py collect static. So this is going to go through our project, find all of our static files, and move them into that new folder we just created. Can't open file manage.py. Let's go back a level and do it here. Yes. I need to type in yes, apparently. Alright, yes. So it moved all those static files into a new folder. And we can check, there is now in fact a static folder here. That's where all the static files are going to live now. It's just going to give it a more consistent place to find everything. And it's going to make it run just a little bit faster. So from here we need to start configuring gunicorn. So, okay, they want me to run this command. And sometimes when you paste these commands in, they'll try to run right away. So I'm going to use this text editor so I can text edit in my project name. So this is, the project name is Dojo Signal, so I'm just going to copy that in there. And this is the command I want to run. So gunicorn bind this stuff. So we're saying bind the port 8000 that everything wants to try running on to Dojo Signal WSGI application. Okay. And when I run this, everything looks good, and I can quit it with Control-C. Perfect. Now deactivate my virtual environment. Okay. You can deactivate by saying deactivate. Perfect. And then they want me to enter sudo vim this stuff. Okay. So they want me to go to this file and edit this new file. So instead of using vim, I would prefer to use nano. And we're just going to do the same thing. And they want me to paste in this stuff. So we're going to paste in this stuff. And I need to go in here and change a few things. So let's see. Instead of repo name, it needs to say Dojo Signal. It's starting to get a little bit laggy when I'm typing in here. And repo name once more. Dojo Signal. And instead of project name, it's going to be Dojo _Signal. Now this is where you really don't want to mess up, guys, because if you mess up these files, you could make your deployment not work. So once again, dojo.signal. So we're just going to check it again real quick. Project name .sock, project name WSGI, and project name should be this thing. Perfect. So this all looks good to me, and I can save it by doing Control X and saying yes, and then pressing enter. We don't want to change the name of this. So it created a file for us with all of that information in it. And now they want us to run these things. Sudo system ctl daemon reload. So I couldn't really tell you exactly what this one does, but I probably knew once upon a time. So then we're going to start G unicorn, and then we're going to run enable G unicorn. Created symlink. Perfect. So we can go to these places and make sure that it created this link. Symlink is basically like a program shortcut on Windows or Mac or anything like that. So Nginx, we need to configure Nginx, and then we're almost done. We're really close. So we're going to copy this, and we are almost done, guys. Instead of Vim, we're going to use Nano again, because I prefer that one. Instead of project name, we're going to say dojo underscore signal underscore signal, not signal, signal. We're going to copy that into here, and in here we're going to paste in all of this stuff. Make sure you get it all when you're going to paste. So the first thing we need to change here, server name, we need to give it the correct IP, and we have that written down, so we can just copy it in. And paste it there. And then we need to go change it from my repo name. Instead of my repo name, I believe this was dojo-signal. And this location, dojo-signal, dojo underscore signal. Okay, and I don't think there's anything else I need to change here, so I'm going to Control X to write this out, say yes, press enter, and from here, now in the terminal we're going to run this thing. We're going to create another symbolic link, it looks like. We're linking what's here with what's there. And we do need to change something in it, so I'm going to copy it in here so I can change it real quick. So instead of project name, it's going to say dojo underscore signal. And we're going to copy this in. Good, we got that in there. And then we're going to test our Nginx config, and it hopefully will say that it looks okay. So, syntax is okay, test is successful. That's what we want to see. And now for wrapping up. It says that we want to go to this place, etc nginx sites enabled /default, and we're going to remove that file. So I'm just going to manually go there, just so we can see what's happening. Proceeding into here. So there's this default. We don't want default to be there anymore. So alright, default. Sudo rm default, and now default is gone, and they want us to sudo service nginx restart, and that should be it if we did everything correctly, which I don't know, I haven't had a great track record of getting everything correctly when I'm doing it live, so it might work. We're really hopeful that it will. Didn't throw any errors, that's usually a pretty good sign. So now we can attempt to connect to this server by going here. Oh, thank goodness. It's working. Okay, so any of you guys can now visit the site. So let's log in as Jeff again. El Jefe. Password test 1 2 3 4. Never. And we can send messages to people. Fantastic. So let's send a message to Desta saying we are live. We'll log out. We'll log back in as Desta. And we can view this message. We are live. And we're back. Alright. So I'm kind of glad I got that caught on video because I've never done one of these live and have it go 100% according to plan before. So this is not likely to happen the first time you go and do it unless you're really careful and you're copying things into the command line or copying things into a text editor and making sure it looks right before you paste it in there. I encourage taking your time when you're doing it so you avoid having to do it multiple times. So really nothing too bad. We just followed a checklist basically. I know it was a lot of steps, but if you guys can get your black belt, this should be the easier part, and we're able to help you with this as well. So that was another hour and a half. So this has been 3 hours in total. Thank you guys for sticking around this long. And I think I'm just going to stop this now before we go too crazy. But just a quick wave. Goodbye, guys. Goodbye. Awesome. All right, let's stop.